Hello everyone, it's Natalie and I am finally back from London and back to Booktube. I got back a couple weeks ago and I've just been unpacking, cleaning, organizing, trying to relax from a busy semester and just trying to settle back into normal life. The program kept us pretty on our toes, so I didn't have much time to film or upload. I do still have some vlogs I'm sorting through. Anyway, the point is I am back on Booktube. Since it has been a little while, I thought the most natural thing to do is catch all up on what I've been reading the past few months. So today I will be doing my reading wrap up for January and February. Out of the past 4 months, those two were the ones I got the most reading done in. I think I read 7 books. Yeah, 7 books. I enjoyed a lot of them. I even found some new favorites that I am really excited to share with y'all. Starting in January with a book left over from December, I read Scarlet by Marissa Meyer. This is the second book in the Lunar Chronicles series, which I had been trying to reread in preparation for finally getting to the last book, Winter, which I actually just finished. If you don't know what the Lunar Chronicles is about, it's a sci-fi series set on a futuristic Earth, and the overall plot and conflict focuses on tension between the earthen countries and a civilization on the moon called Luna and their queen Lavana. There's a conspiracy about a lost princess, space travel, cyborgs, high tech, all that kind of stuff. Each book in the series is also a retelling of a different fairy tale, which is probably the aspect that interested me the most when I started reading the series. As you can probably tell from the cover, Scarlet is a retelling of Little Red Riding Hood. Scarlet lives with her grandmother on their family farm in a small town in France until her grandmother goes missing. Scarlet thinks she's been kidnapped, but no one believes her. She enlists the help of a mysterious and possibly dangerous newcomer and sets off to find out what happened to her grandmother and if she is in trouble, rescue her. I gave Scarlet 4 stars out of 5 on Goodreads. I've really enjoyed Scarlet's character. She is sassy and fierce, very strong-willed and determined, independent. She knows what she wants and nothing's going to get in her way. I'm trying not to go into spoilers, but I loved how Marissa Meyer put her own spin on Little Red Riding Hood, especially with how she incorporated the big bad wolf. I thought that was really cool. I think she connected really well to that overall plot and conflict with Queen Lavana, the looming war, and the events that took place in Cinder. Something that Cinder lacked was world building, and we do get some more of it here, although it's still not an overall world building. It's focused mainly on the specific areas this book is set in, so Scarlet's hometown and Paris. And you learn a little bit more about Luna as well. I did enjoy the romantic subplot. I will say that it's practically insta-love, which I don't really go for. The characters only know each other like a week or 2 at the most. It's been a while since I read this book. I might not be remembering that properly, but they don't know each other for very long, but they fall in love. They do start out like not trusting each other that much. It's not an instant bond. They start out not trusting each other that much. But once they get over that obstacle, the romance progresses pretty quickly. At least in Cinder, that main couple knows each other for a few months, so they actually have a chance to get to know each other. It's a little more realistic. But I do think that the romantic subplot and the other events in this book set Scarlet's character up for some interesting character dynamics and development and conflicts in the rest of the series. The second book I read in January and the first full book I read in that month was Cress, also by Marissa Meyer. It is the 3rd book in the Lunar Chronicles. It is a retelling of Rapunzel, who in this book is called Cress, and she's been forced to work as a hacker and spy for Queen Lavana on a satellite orbiting the Earth until she is rescued and finds herself on Earth on the run as a fugitive. I gave this book 4.5 out of 5 stars. I've enjoyed each Lunar Chronicles book even more than the previous one, and the more I read Marissa Meyer's writing, the more I love it. Since each book introduces new characters, and most, if not all of them, are going to get chapters or parts from their own perspective, at this point in the series, we have a wide range of voices. For the most part, I think that the different voices and perspectives are well balanced and it's fairly evenly paced. And I feel like multiple POVs, especially with this many POVs, is kind of a hard thing to pull off. The separate storylines are starting to tie together really nicely, and you can tell that Marissa Meyer put a lot of thought into this series. Like, from the start, she knew where it was going and how she was going to get there. New directions and discoveries are being made, and it sets up for an epic finale in winter. We do get a better feel for some of the earthen societies, such as the Eastern Commonwealth or Asia, but the Lunar Society is still a bit elusive. Once again, something Marissa Meyer did exceptionally well was that smaller focus world building. In this case, it was the scenes set in these little African towns. They were vividly written, and you really get a feel for the people and the culture. I loved Cress's character. She's never been to Earth before. She's practically grown up in this satellite, so when she does come to Earth, she is awestruck. And I loved getting to see Earth from this new, fresh perspective. I loved seeing her having to navigate and interact with other people, and she also struggled with her expectations of what Earth and Earthen people would be like versus the reality of it. I think it offered great opportunity for character development, especially the parts when she's on her own, and it did happen. Unfortunately, I think it only got her kind of part of the way there, and it also didn't happen until the end-ish. So I'm definitely hoping for more character development. So I am hoping for greater character development in winter. My other con is the time span. If I remember correctly, it happens over the course of a couple weeks. I get that they have like advanced technology and spaceships and hover cars and stuff, but to me it still felt a bit unrealistic. It may have worked in Scarlet because they're traveling over a much shorter distance, they're staying within France, but in Cress, they're traveling all over the world and in space. So a couple weeks just, it's a stretch for me. Another character I liked is Thorne Carswell. He is kind of like that cocky, handsome ladies' man. Most books have one of those, but he's fleshed out beyond that stereotype, which I really like. And there's also a romance in this book, and I love it so much. It's just so tender and sweet and pure. Really, I've loved every romantic subplot in this series. To me, every couple has a different dynamic and different obstacles that they have to overcome. The third book I read in January was Letters to the Lost by Bridget Kimmer. Y'all, this is like my favorite book of the year so far. Back on track. I read this book as part of a book club I joined at the beginning of the year. It's over on Instagram with some fellow bookstagrammers, and we focus on ebooks under $5 and under 400 pages. We pick a different genre each month, and January was contemporary. I am going to do a full review discussion-y thing on it because I have a lot of thoughts. And also, I'm just trying to find an excuse to talk about a favorite book. I mean, we all do that. Letters to the Lost follows Juliet, whose world-famous photojournalist mother has recently died. They shared this tradition of writing letters to each other, and she continued to do that after her mother's death, leaving letters at her grave. And then you have Declan, who is doing community service at that very same cemetery. One day, he finds one of Juliet's letters and, on a whim, decides to write back. This ends up opening a whole chain of anonymous communication, ranging from letters to emails and eventually, like, online chats. Neither one knows that they actually know each other in real life. Of course, causes big conflict when their anonymous and real lives start colliding and past secrets come out. This book surprised me on so many levels. I was apprehensive about going into it because I don't read contemporary very often. Juliet and Declan were just so dimensional as characters and felt very realistic and relatable to me. I felt like the portrayal of grief was very realistic. Also, Declan's friend Rev is officially one of my favorite characters. I might even like him a bit more than Juliet and Declan, even though he's just a side character. I want him to be my friend. This book focuses a lot on friendship and family. Again, it's just so realistic with how it portrays grief and relationship to those things. I do want to say that this deals with some pretty heavy topics. Obviously, it deals with grief and the loss of a loved one. There's just a lot of talk about death in general in the book. There's also mentions of depression, attempted suicide, past child abuse, parental neglect, and addiction to alcohol. So keep that in mind. If you're interested in reading this book, just make sure that you're in the right mindset to be reading it. But other than that concern, I highly, highly recommend this book because it does deal with all these heavy topics, but it does so in a way that's not just realistic, but also respectful. And it does it so beautifully. The next book I read in January was Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman. Read isn't quite the right word because I finally dipped my toes into the world of audiobooks and I listened to this one. I had already been interested in reading more from Neil Gaiman this year after I read The Graveyard Book by him last year and loved it. So when I found out that BBC Radio had a dramatization of it available on their website, I jumped at the chance to listen to it. I finished it in a little over a day, and now I kind of want to read a physical copy along with it. I feel like that would really add to the experience. I think they had some really great casting choices, and the music and sound effects just sealed the deal. It's really fun. It's got humor, action, drama, and it's also kind of educational because you're learning more about Norse mythology. Next is A Study in Scarlet by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. This is the very first, the original Sherlock Holmes story. I gave it 2.5 stars out of 5 because I liked literally half of it. It was split into 2 parts, part 1 and part 2. First part is the one I really liked. It's when Watson and Holmes are first meeting and getting to know each other, and that friendship is forming. They're also investigating this man who is found dead, but there was no clear sign of the cause of death. The second part is like the whole background to the murder. It's like the second part is like the background story of the murderer and how he got to murdering, and like it's the whole explanation of why they did it, and it just got plain weird. There's like polygamy, child brides and stuff, kidnapping and forced marriage, all this crazy stuff going on. Additionally, the transition from part 1 to part 2 was basically non-existent. Like I literally thought I was reading a different story. Like the ebook I got had multiple Sherlock Holmes stories and this was a new mystery, but it wasn't. Although this is the one that established Sherlock Holmes, I don't think it's one of the stronger Sherlock Holmes stories. The next book I've read was The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak. I was reading this throughout January and part of February as a buddy reread with some other wonderful people on Bookstagram. I love this book so much. It's one of my favorites, and I'll never tire of reading it or talking about it or recommending it. I love seeing Liesl grow up. I love her friendships with Max and Rudy. I love the fact that Death narrates it. Some people think it's a little gimmicky, it doesn't work for them, but I like it. I also like the historical component of it and how it addresses Nazi Germany and World War II from the perspective of an everyday citizen. And it addresses how a normal German person could get caught up in like the Nazi Party and the Holocaust and all these horrible acts of discrimination and anti-Semitism. I think it does a really good job of showing the realities of war and its effects in the home front, in the people. It's heartbreaking and beautiful, and I will never fully be over this book. A million stars, a million stars. In February, I also read a book related to a study in Scarlet, and that is a study in Charlotte by Brittany Cavallaro. Judging from the title alone, I thought this was simply going to be a retelling of the original Sherlock Holmes mystery. But while it does play a role, a lot of the other Sherlock Holmes mysteries are incorporated. It is set in the present times. Jamie Watson, who is descended from the original Dr. Watson, ends up at the same boarding school as Sherlock Holmes. He's always dreamed of meeting her, but things don't go as he expects when the two of them get framed for the murder of a fellow student. So now they get the chance to solve a mystery together like their ancestors did, but the stakes are even higher because it's the only way that they can clear their names. I originally had it as a very strong 4. I might change that to a 5. I really enjoyed this book. It's fast-paced and funny, and it keeps you at the edge of your seat. I love the dynamic between Jamie and Charlotte. You have this exciting and dangerous mystery going on. At the same time, it deals with some pretty difficult topics like rape and drug addiction. You never forget that it's the characters that are the center of the story and that they're human. I've had a hard time in the past finding series I want to stick with. Maybe I judge first books too hard, I don't know, but I am really compelled to continue this series. I love the characters, and I do think it offers something new to the mystery genre and to retelling. The last book I read in February was The Paper Magician by Charlie N. Holmberg. This was February's pick for the Bookstagram book club I am in, and it was our fantasy month. Paper Magician is like this alternate history, magical realism, or fantasy sort of book. And it is set in the early 1900s in London. In this version of the world, magic is related to material. So paper, metal, glass, rubber, possibly fabric, I think. You're able to go to magic school, then at the end of it, you have an apprenticeship before you officially become a magician, and you get to choose what type of magic you want to do, because once you're bonded to that material, it is the only type of magic you can practice for the rest of your life. So it's a pretty big deal. Our main character, Sienny, has always dreamed of being a smelter, a metal magician, but when she gets to her apprenticeship, she doesn't get to choose. She is assigned to be the apprentice to Emery Thane, who is a paper magician or a folder, because there is a shortage of paper magicians. No one wants to be a paper magician. Sienny is forced to adjust to this new reality, but just as she is getting to know her mentor and the material and the magic, a terrible event occurs. Magician Thane is attacked by a woman named Lyra, who is an excisioner. She practices the forbidden flesh and blood magic, and she takes his heart. Sienny decides to set out after her and get his heart back. However, she actually finds herself trapped inside his heart, and in order to get out, defeat Lyra, save her mentor, she must travel through each chamber of his heart and experience his memories, all the while being chased by Lyra. I gave this book 3 stars out of 5. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't great either. It just didn't wow me as I expected it would. The premise sounded really interesting. The magic system seems really unique to me, as did the whole journey through the heart thing. I started out having a hard time getting into it. After the first 3 or 4 chapters, I finally had a breakthrough, and I was flying through it for a big chunk. Then about halfway, I realized I wasn't enjoying it as much as I thought I was. Wasn't that invested in Sienny's character? Her character just came off as very naive and immature. Now, some of the people in my book club attributed that to her being young. This possibly counts as a new adult series. Signe is 19. But my problem was, I'm 20, and I was actually still 19 when I read this book. I was Signe's age, and she still came off as young to me. And I just had this big disconnect. Some other things I didn't like was, I thought there's going to be more magic in this book than there actually was. The magic system just seems really cool to me, and I just wanted more of it. The journey through Thane's heart also lacked a sense of urgency. Signe would suddenly remember, oh yeah, Lyra's chasing after me. I have to keep moving. If I were being chased by someone who could kill me, that would be on the forefront of my mind. There is also a romance that I wasn't a big fan of. I didn't like it because it kind of became the main focus of the story, and I just didn't like that. I also didn't like how it started to affect Signe's behavior. At the beginning of the book, she doesn't really care about her appearance, and that she doesn't wear makeup or do her hair or wear super nice clothes to try and impress other people. But when she develops feelings for this person, she starts doing all these things. The villain, Lyra, is also not fleshed out very much. All that being said, I have heard this is the kind of series where the books and the writing get better as they go. It develops more, the romance gets better, although it takes a bit of a backseat. There's more magic, which is what I wanted in the first place, and there are better villains than Lyra. I may give the sequel a try, but it's just not a priority to me at the moment. The Paper Magician didn't impress me that much, and there are just other series I am more excited about. I will say that I was actually in the minority when it came to my book club. A lot of the members loved this book, so just a reminder, some part of reviews and reading experiences are going to be subjective. Okay, we are finally at the end of this wrap up. Those were all the books I read in January and February, and I will have a wrap up for March and April coming up next. Since I have some catching up to do, let me know down in the comments some of your favorite books that you read in January and or February. Make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to my channel and click that notification bell to get updates about new content. Have a wonderful rest of your day, keep reading, and I will see you next time here on The Mighty Quill.